Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome back, everybody. This is our fifth session of our Risale-i Nur study. We started a few months back, and as I promised last month, this session is going to be about materialism versus God, how things have come into existence. This is quite scientific, quite philosophical. There is almost no theological or religious element in it. So it is quite efficient if you are talking to a secular person, for example. You give them this piece that is the 23rd flush, and it is a very powerful philosophical and scientific argument. As a former scientist, I was quite impressed with the argument that Bediüzzaman sets out in this piece of work. So, before further ado, let's have a look at the text together, because, as you know, the main purpose of this lecture series is to give the audience a bit of a taster, bit of an appetizer, so that they develop this interest into studying Risale-i Nur by themselves. Surely it is a fairly sizable piece of text. We cannot cover everything in 40 odd minutes, but I'm going to highlight the main interesting bits in it. Well, it's all interesting, but in 40 minutes, we can only touch to so many points. This piece was written, well, if you are navigating like I do using this digital material, it is the third of Bediüzzaman's books. It is called The Flushes. Mind you, I have seen some translation into American English where they choose the word the gleams. So don't be surprised if you see the gleams or the flushes. They are the same book. The translation I'm using is the British English translation, which is one of the oldest ones. It is the work of Mary Weld, or AKA Şükran Vahide. I like this translation because I'm a bilingual reader. I read original text and I read English translation, and this is closest to the original text. So the language is quite heavy, quite British, and a bit old. But in terms of pleasure, this is closest to the original. There is another translation by Ali Ünal or Hüseyin Akarsu. It's the same person. It is lighter, and he chose to name this book as The Gleams. So there is this confusion, but it is essentially the same book. So the flushes, if you can navigate down, you're gonna see the 23rd flush. Obviously, I'm not gonna read everything line by line, but this opening bit is quite interesting. Nursi says why he published this piece of work for the second time. Because he published this work previously in Arabic. You can still find the original Arabic version if you really do a deep search. So let's quickly go through why he decided to rewrite it again. It says a reminder, this treatise, this risale, this piece of work explains 9 impossibilities, themselves comprising at least 19 possibilities, just how unreasonable, crude, and superstitious is the way taken by the naturalists who are atheists. In order to cut short the discussion here, and because these impossibilities have been explained in part in other sections of the Risale-i Nur, some steps in the arguments have been skipped. It occurs to me, to one, therefore, how is it that those famous and supposedly brilliant philosophers accepted such a blatantly obvious superstition and continue to pursue that way? Well, the fact is that they cannot see its reality. And I am ready to explain in detail and prove through clear and decisive arguments to whoever doubts it that these crude, repugnant, and unreasonable impossibilities are the necessary and unavoidable result of their way. In fact, the very gist of their creed. Here, I'll just skip the bit. A point to mention before the discussion. So this is a good one. He says he went to Ankara, the new republic, because Ottoman Empire collapsed and Republic of Turkey, emerged from the ashes of the Ottoman Empire. 1922, just before the declaration of independence and declaration of republic, Nursi actually goes to Ankara, the capital city, and he realizes that it is not like Ottoman Empire because the new bunch who are about to rule the land, they are quite obsessed with Western way of atheist thinking. So they call it secular, but in reality, it was quite atheist. So they wanted to remove God and they want to set up something uh, strictly secular because there are levels of secularism. So what they were after was, very strict, rigid, secular way of governance. This is 1922. And Nursi interacted with some MPs. And he also interacted with Mustafa Kemal, the president of the new republic. And there were discussions, and he was referring to his work. So he says further down, I had it printed in Ankara at Yeni Gün Press, but also, alas, those who knew Arabic were few. You see, it was printed and it was already out there, but it was in Arabic. And not many people could read Arabic. Also, its argument was in extremely concise and abbreviated form. It was a shorter version of this piece. As a result, this Risale, the treatise, did not have the effect it should have done. And sadly, the current of atheism both swelled and gained strength. Now I feel compelled to explain a part of the proof that was in Arabic with greater detail in Turkish. So, this is the background. Another thing I mentioned before we crack on with these three arguments, if I go back one page, Nursi mentions about this atheist way of thinking, and he says it is the naturalists, if I can find that expression somewhere. It's anyway. So my point is, I when I started my PhD many years ago, one pattern I realized normally in philosophy, if there is an argument, if there is an idea, we usually see who came up with that idea. So the names are quite important. And look at your own world. Probably you have heard of some rules and principles attributed to certain individuals, but you don't really know the rule, but you know the name. Like Hooke's law, like I don't know, Galileo's law or Newton. You see, you keep hearing the names, or Darwin, but not many people know what the law or philosophy or argument is. You see how names come to mind before the idea itself. This is what happens in modern world. I mean, in the world in general, not necessarily in modern world. But you're gonna realize in Risale-i Nur, so many books, so many pages, yet very, very few names mentioned. For example, you can never see the word Darwin. He's the, theorist of evolution. You can never see the name of Auguste Comte or Ludwig Büchner because these are the materialist and naturalist big people, very famous. But Nursi never mentions the name. He says, we don't care about the names, we care about the ideas. So this is quite unique. You can always do a search directly using this digital resource, or like me, if you're old-fashioned, you can go on the back side, back page, I mean, very end of the book, and in the index, you can check if the name Darwin is ever mentioned in the text. I can tell you, you won't find many famous names. So our position is to argue against the ideas. We don't care about individuals. So what are their ideas? What do they say? Okay, we all exist. We cannot deny this. We live a life on this beautiful planet, which is amazing. With the advent of technology and social media, you can see how vast the universe is, how small this planet is, and how fantastic everything is on this earth. You, me, living beings, non-living beings, everything is beautiful, everything is amazing. Therefore, there is this question: how? How did we end up here? As I said in one of the previous lessons, the written records, it starts with ancient Greece. They debated on this. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, they always talked about the origin, how things are coming into existence, etc. So this has been a hot topic for a long, long time, and it still is. I live in Britain. People pretend to be secular, but deep down, they are curious. They want to know how we ended up here. What happens when we die? Is there a purpose? When you start the conversation, they say, "Oh, I'm not into religion and stuff. I'm not interested." But they are. Because kullu nefsin ذائقة الموت. We know this is Quranic verse. Every living soul will taste death. Everything will die, and everything has been dying. So they know it. So no matter how cool they act, no matter how much they say, "Oh, I don't really care," they do. Because everybody knows they're gonna die. Everybody wants to know the meaning of this life, the origin, and what's happening. Okay, so the bottom line, there are four possible explanations. So this is strictly uh, logical. Okay, we are here, there is life, etc. Four possible explanation. One, you look at in terms of causality. What is causing the existence of this thing? You got chain of events. Photosynthesis, we keep talking about this. Tree, you put seed, it grows into a tree. When you look at the existence of that tree, you say, okay, one theory, causes are creating this. Because when you observe as a scientist, because we used to have this experiment when I was teaching science in schools, we have two plant pots. We saw two identical seeds. We put one of them in the cupboard where there is no light in darkness, and we put the other one on the windowsill. I remember doing this experiment many times. And the one on the windowsill grows, and the one in the cupboard where there is no sun doesn't grow. Or if it is a live plant, it dies. And we ask students, is okay, so based on your observations, write a conclusion. They say, okay, so if you remove one of the causes like water, warmth, and light, if you remove one of them, the plant doesn't grow or the plant dies. It makes sense. So the first argument is causes create this. Second one, less scientific, yet more common. Everybody, it's our second nature. We talk about that. You know, one time I was sitting on the balcony when I was back home, and I saw this cherry tree growing. And my mom says, oh, it's growing by itself. Kendi kendine büyüyor. Very common. It's just growing by itself. It forms itself, it comes into existence, and later ceases to exist. In their language, this is how we describe things. It is just growing by itself. Look at these plants, just by itself. This is the second explanation. The third one, this is something you hear a lot if you are a keen documentary person like I am. I watch almost all BBC science documentaries. I'm a big fan of David Attenborough. Brilliant man. He's 97, I think. But you keep hearing this. When he explains fascinating events in Africa, he says this natural phenomena is directing zebras towards Masai Mara from Serengeti. The nature is calling these animals. The nature is working its magic. I'm sure you also hear this. It's natural. Nature necessitates and creates it. This is the most common pseudoscientific explanation of scientists when they explain how things are happening. They say, nature, it is the universe. This is number three. And the fourth one, that's where Nursi comes in. He says, indeed, since beings exist, and this cannot be denied, and since each being comes into existence in a wise and artistic fashion, and since each is not outside time but is being continuously renewed, then all falsifier of the truth, you are bound to say that the causes in this world create beings. For example, this animal, that's to say, it comes into existence through the coming together of causes, or that it forms by itself, second, or that's coming into existence is a requirement and necessary effect of nature, three, or this is his bit, that is created through the power of one all powerful and all glorious. There are only four ways. It's one of them. Since reason can find no way apart from these four, if the first three are definitely proved to be impossible, invalid, and absurd, the way of divine unity, which is the fourth way, will necessarily and self-evidently and without a doubt or suspicion be proved. Very clever. Four possible ways. Causes are creating this. It is happening by itself, or nature is creating it. Nursi says, if we show that these three arguments are false, he's gonna nullify them in a minute, then you end up with the fourth option. That is, it is being created by an all-powerful entity, someone that is God. So this is the very foundation of this treatise, this risale. Now, in the coming pages, this is what Nursi does. I'll give you the big picture. He sets out three atheistic arguments. Causes creating, it's happening by itself, or nature creating. And he calls each of these a they. So the first way is causes. And for the first way, he sets out three very powerful arguments to refute the first way. Then he does the same thing for the second way, which is things happening by itself. And he's doing the same thing for the third way, which is nature creating. So this is the general architecture of this Risale. Obviously, I'm not going to go through every impossibility, but I'll show you a couple of examples because the bottom line is once you listen to this lesson, I would like everybody, I don't assign homework, but I would like everybody to go and read this piece from beginning to end. Okay, the first way, let's have a look. This is to imagine that the formation and existence of things, creatures, occurs through the coming together of causes in the universe. We shall mention only three of its numerous impossibilities. The first one you will love, and the first one will probably stick with you. Why causes cannot create a thing? I was very young when I heard this, and I loved it. And I think it became quite popular and it's been used widely in various circles. First impossibility, why, even though we say photosynthesis depends on warmth, water, and light. This is what we teach at schools. But Nurse says, I'm going to prove it's not the case. First impossibility. Imagine there's a pharmacy in which are found hundreds of jars and vials filled with quite different substances. This is also very clever. Imagine you're walking into a pharmacy, the lab section of the pharmacy, where they prepare medicine. You got shelves and you got jars in which you got substances. And Nurse says, found hundreds of jars and vials with different substances. This refers to basically periodic table of elements. We got like 120 odd elements because the building block of everything, every living thing is more or less the same from the periodic tables. For example, human body, it's like two-thirds water. That's hydrogen, one hydrogen atom combined with two oxygen and forming a molecule. That's H2O. What else have we got in our body? Nitrogen, we got magnesium, we got iron. So everything in human body exists in nature. There isn't anything secretive or magical. We are living beings. You can actually break down, I can quickly show you elements in human body percentage. So someone prepared this. Let's, yeah, Wikipedia, good old Wikipedia. There we go. This is, let me just make it a bit bigger. You think you are special, but this is your material. What have you got? You got oxygen, like oxygen you breathe. Carbon, this is like coal. Hydrogen, nitrogen, and these are the uh, percentage. So 65% of your body is oxygen, 9% hydrogen, 2% nitrogen, calcium, phosphorus, sulfur, potassium, sodium, chlorine, magnesium, and few others less than 0.1 of a percent. So this is what you're made up of. So Nurse says you got jars full of substances. A living potion and living remedy are required from those medicaments. So we go to the pharmacy and see that they are to be found there in abundance, yet in great variety. You have a headache, you need a medicine, and there are chemicals in various jars. You need something like paracetamol or aspirin or Nurofen, whatever it's called in your country, but in Britain it's usually paracetamol. We examine each of the potions and see that the ingredients have been taken in varying but precise amount from each of the jars and phials. 1 ounce from this, three from that, seven from the next, and so on. That's the ingredient of very basic medicine, aspirin. If 1 ounce, like it's like gram, it is not like exactly gram, but you got pound and ounce in Britain, but in the rest of the world, it is kilogram and gram. Probably you are more familiar with kilogram and gram, but in Britain, we have pound and ounce. So if 1 ounce too much or too little had been taken, the potion would not have been living and would not have displayed its special qualities. Okay, so this is very common. You got counterfeit products. You know, you go to proper pharmacy, you got the medicine, it's like 50 pounds. And you go online on the internet, you can do a bit of search and you can find something very similar, identical looking coming from China. Oh, you say, oh, it's like Temu, like 10 times cheaper. Then you order. It comes and you have it. Instead of curing your headache, it poisons you. You got stomach poisoning and they take you to emergency to wash your stomach. So idea is this. It is a replica. It's counterfeit. They know what's in it. Probably they know the proportion, but they cannot imitate it 100%. It is dodgy and it kills you. Something similar. People, probably you hear this all the time, alcohol poisoning. I mean, people, instead of buying expensive whiskey, they do the counterfeit, they want to reproduce something very basic, but they miss the proportion and that becomes poison. And Nurse highlights this. If you miss milligram of the right substance, it doesn't cure you, it kills you. It's a poison. Next, we study living remedy, and again, the ingredients have been taken from the jars in a particular measure so that if even the most minute amount too much or too little had been taken, the remedy would have lost its special property. Now, although the jars number more than 50, okay, so when it says more than 50, it is referring to the elements in periodic table. The ingredients have been taken from each according to measures and amounts that are all different. Is it in any way possible or probable that the files, the jars, should have been knocked over by a strange coincidence of sudden gust of wind, and that only the precise, though different, amounts that had been taken from each of them should have been spilt and then arrange themselves and come together to form the remedy. So you go to this pharmacist, you say, ah, aspirin, what is it? What's in it? It's very basic. I think it's just some random, wind just knocked over some jars, they spill, they mix, and there we go. You got people just laugh. It is impossible. Something very basic. Unless you have knowledge, el-ilm, irade, will, kudre, power, and hikmeh, wisdom. In Risale-i Nur, Nursi says, ilim, irade, kudret, hikmet. So, to get this thing done, you need four things. First, you need to know you're making something very basic. Then you want to do it. This is number two. Number three, you need to have power to do it. İlim, el-ilm, irade, kudre. I'll give you another example. As a physicist, because I got asked this question so many times. So in physics, we teach nuclear fusion and fission, splitting the atom and merging them. So if you split the atom, there is a great deal of energy released and you got nuclear energy. So this is the upshot of it. So you need a bit of uranium, some processing, you split it, and you got your nuclear energy. And students usually says, sir, why don't we do it? Why don't we do it? Because very few countries can actually do it. They are building some nuclear power plants in various parts of the world. I know there is one being built in Britain, Hinkley Point. It is costing so much money and so much time because knowing is not good enough. So, Britain, okay, so let's have a quick look because it is connected to this Risale we are studying. So, it is called Hinkley Point. I'll tell you. So, Hinkley Point, all right. Hinkley Point is a handland from nuclear point, Hinkley Point C, I think. Okay, oh, it's amazing. You should look at this. It's Hinkley Point C. It's being built by EDF, that's the French company. It is massive. It is massive, and it's let's check the cost. So Hinkley Point C cost. I'll show you how much it cost. 31 to 34 billion. Just one nuclear power station. And it's been many, many years. Coming back to Risale-i Nur. So, to make something, you need knowledge. We have knowledge, but we still can't do it. We have to ask the French to come and do it. Why? Okay, you need knowledge, you need will, you want to do it. We have the will in Britain. We want to build a nuclear station, but we can't do it. Why? Because we are missing the third one, power. We don't have power. We can't do it. So they have the power, they come and do it. So knowledge, will, and power. You need three things to get things done. I'll show you a very modern example. So coming back to this medicine, it is not as complicated as building a nuclear power station, yet it is difficult. You go to the pharmacy and you pay money, good money, and uh, you purchase the medicine. Why don't you just go do it yourself? It's on the internet. You can just quickly Google it. So let's have a look. Ingredients of paracetamol. Paracetamol. Okay, it comes. Let's have a look. Paracetamol is available 200 grams tablet. Okay, so let's open some images and let's see what's in. The metabolic ingredients of active paracetamol. Well, basically, you can, but you know my point. It's only few chemicals in certain ratios. But why can you not go and make your own medicine? You can't because you simply cannot. So again, Nursi says it takes knowledge, will, and power. İlim, irade, kudret ve hikmet. The wisdom. Okay, coming back to the text. Precise, true, different amounts that has been taken from each should be split together to form the remedy. Okay. Is there anything more superstitious, impossible, and absurd than this? If an ass, donkey, baby donkey, could speak, he would say, I cannot accept this idea. This is so dumb. That's what the donkey says. And would gallop off. So you cannot make a donkey to believe in this nonsense. Similarly, now we are coming to the point. Similarly, each living being may be likened to the living potion in the composition, and each plant to a living remedy, for they are composed of matter that has been taken in most precise measure from truly numerous and truly various substances. If these are attributed to causes and elements, and it is claimed causes created these, it is unreasonable, impossible, and absurd 100 times over. Just as it was to claim that the position in the pharmacy came into existence through the files being knocked over by accident. So this is one of the arguments because I as a scientist, I'm quite interested in understanding science behind everything. Because understanding science strengthens your faith. Because we know scientific processes are the way God creates. وَفِي كُلِّ يَوْمٍ هُوَ فِي شَأْنٍ. Allah creates continuously. He creates in two fashion. One is out of nothing, that's called ibda. The other one is called composition. Insha, it's at the end of this Risale we are reading. So what we are observing in the nature, tree growing, it is Allah continuously, gradually creating by means of insha, by means of composition. So each time we understand the science, people say, what happens when science discovers everything? That's good. If science discovers everything, it means now we understand Sunnatullah, how Allah creates things. I am quite interested, I'm quite passionate. So, advancement in science only strengthens that God is being creating. It doesn't mean it is happening by itself. It doesn't mean causes are coming together and creating things. No, it just makes it more powerful argument that someone with knowledge, will, and power is doing it. So we are quite keen on understanding scientific uh, discoveries. One thing, because time is quite limited on this, I discovered a book called Darwin's Black Box. So I'm gonna recommend this book. It's been written by Professor uh, Michael Behe. Michael, I got the book on my shelf. Michael Behe. Okay, he's our man. Darwin's Black Box. Darwin's Black Box. Black. Okay, Michael Behe, Darwin Black Box. Okay, this is the book. Image. It looks like this, and I bought it. I read it, and I had this impression. I thought, this guy, he's a professor of microbiology. He's not a theologian, he's not a religious person. He's a scientist. He's a professor of microbiology. Beautiful, very scientific. And I thought, I think this guy read Risale-i Nur and he said, I'm going to write a scientific book to complement Bediüzzaman's arguments. Because this book is basically a scientific addition to Nursi's 23rd Flush, Tabiat Risalesi, and Darwin's Black Box. I suggest, if you're interested and if you're a bit of a scientific person, because it's full of chemical explanations, graphs, etc., and very scientific, very mathematical, and it just blows my mind. Since I know Risale-i Nur already, this has been written, many years later. It's a fantastic duo. In one pocket, you got Risale-i Nur, the 23rd Flush, Tabiat Risalesi. In another pocket, you got Michael Behe. Beautiful, beautiful. It is like kebab with ayran. They can go separate. Yeah, coming back to the text and wrap it up. Out of three ways, things happening as a result of causes coming together, Nursi gave one example. There are two more. We didn't touch the second way, which is it's happening by itself. And we didn't touch the third one, nature is creating it. So that brings me to my original starting point. This is a reading assignment. Go for it. Start reading from beginning to end. And if you have extra time and passion, grab this book. You're gonna be so happy. You're gonna be standing very solid on your ground. Right. Again, time is up. Before I start the lesson, I'm always thinking, oh, 45 minutes, what am I going to talk? What am I going to talk? Then I realize it is never enough. I'm just thinking, oh, we need like many more to cover all the others. But as I said, I'm not very keen on me talking. I don't like monologue. I'm just pointing at the source. Go for it, grab the book, read Risale-i Nur, this piece, 23rd Flush, read Bihi. You're gonna be very happy. So, before I go, I will tell you where we are at on our syllabus. This is it. We started in September. We did the introduction. We talk about purpose of existence. We talk about problem of evil, divine determining last week. And this week we talk about materialism. Uh, you can always go back and watch the previous videos. And the next time in March, we're going to talk about logic behind worship and supplication. Why do we pray? Why do we do it 5 times a day? So that is the topic of our next lesson. It's been 45 minutes. Thanks for your patience, and I'll see you next time.